Welcome to an instalment of Amen with Noel and Remy. Today we're going to have a bit of a chat about what the podcast is about and where we're going to go with it. How are you, Rem?
I'm going well. How are you?
Very well, thank you. It's good to see you there and all enthusiastic and ready to go. Are you?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, good. What have you been doing this week?
This week, just been working on the business and been training with some friends and yeah, just kind of looking into jobs and pursuing university and stuff. It's the start of the new year, so just searching for things to do, I suppose.
Fantastic. Now, you are currently getting your thesis published.
Yes. I am in the process of doing that. I just heard from my supervisor yesterday. So yeah, that'll be one thing I'm doing, and the year's still early, so I'm either going to do that, university, work.
Oh, that's great. That sounds really, really good.
Because we just finished university only a couple of months ago, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. And we started in 2019, and we both ended up being study partners together in the same class, same lecturers, same assignments, same parameters and criteria, and we went right through to complete the undergraduate and complete honours in psychological science as a father and son team. So we're quite famous around the campus, aren't we?
Yeah, we definitely are. We definitely knew everyone, and everyone knew us.
Everyone knew us. Our reputation had the propensity to precede us, really. Our reputation got there before we did. So just be aware that does happen to everybody. Your reputation will arrive well before you do. So be very careful with your reputation when you're developing. Protect it with your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. That's what happened, and that's how we come about. Now, listen, we are talking on a podcast about Amen. What's Amen, mate?
Well, Amen is kind of our business that we want to launch. Stands for Aimed Motivation Empowerment Network. Is that correct?
That is bang on the money, mate. Yes, that's correct. So it's a bit of a play on words, isn't it?
Yeah.
Aimed motivation. We want to make sure that your motivation is directed directly to the goals that you want to pursue. And we're going to want to empower you in a network so you can achieve those goals.
That's right. And Amen kind of have a twist on it because we're going to preach to young men.
Correct.
On appropriate masculine roles in today's society.
Correct. Pardon the pun with using the word preach. I don't know about preaching, but we certainly will be talking about topics and issues and looking at barriers and looking at pathways and looking at setting goals and looking at dispelling myths and standing into your truths and becoming the man that you would like to see yourself become.
Yeah, and I'm a strong believer in purpose through responsibility, so responsibility would be a huge topic.
Responsibility is going to be a huge topic, and we're going to speak to that quite a bit. I think that's quite a relevant topic today. We have a lot of policies and government structures around us, particularly in the Western world, that try very hard to take responsibility out of your hands and into the hands of government so they can look after you. But I think that's more detrimental to the growth of particularly young men in our society about how they actually get their hands on the steering wheel of responsibility for themselves. So we're going to have a bit of a chat about that as we go forward too. Good point. Now, I was going to mention to some of the people that we do subscribe to and listen as part of our journey, people like, Jordan Peterson, for a start. We're also avid fans of people like Joe Rogan, and Craig Harper is another inspirational, motivational speaker that we listen to quite a bit. Is there any others that have taken your fancy, mate, in terms of podcast and education around inspiration?
No, I kind of just listen to a whole range of podcasts and have always wanted to do it. But in terms of inspiration, Jordan Peterson really helped me get out of some depths when I was younger, for sure.
Absolutely. And how did it help?
Well, young men in society are starving for words of encouragement. And I was very young, I was still a teenager, and I was just developing into a man myself. And I was hearing some very cruel messages that young men hear, such as we oppress women just for being male. And we've designed this hierarchy, social hierarchy of to oppressed women specifically throughout history. And so that was a very tough thing for me to hear about because I was just a young boy. And so Jordan Peterson kind of pulled me out of that and saying that, well, we're not like that. And this is a thing that young men go to, and especially teenagers, they become aimless. And it gives a foundation of anxiety to breed. And so when you become aimless and anxious with everything, it impacts almost every part of your life. So Jordan Peterson has been a huge lift for me in terms of personal development, masculine identity, and just overall well-being. He's really helped me and enlightened me in a way. And like furthermore, put me on a huge spiritual path. And I think that was very reinforced by you, Dad, too. I am going to say that, you know, you are my hero, Dad. So
thank you.
So number one would be my father's guidance.
My head's going to get so big it won't fit out the door. God, hang on. I've got to better put a hat on.
But yeah, there's been heaps of them. Like
thank you, mate.
Stephen Crowder and Jordan Peterson. And
yes. Yep. They're very controversial people, of course, but they're actually touching on issues that we really need to discuss. And I know some people don't like to hear about that or discuss those controversial issues, but we really need to have that conversation. That's part of the motivation behind the podcast and the implementation of what you and I are attempting to achieve.
And even if we just reach out to one young person that can benefit from our conversations, like that's huge.
Yep,
that's huge for us. So, what about yourself?
Tend to agree. Yeah, look, speaking about Jordan Peterson, I'd like to touch on Jordan for a minute as well. He really, when I first discovered him, it was through YouTube, of course, surfing mindless stuff on YouTube. And one person was giving a commentary on the interview that he did with Kathy Freeman on who?
Kathy Newman, I think.
Newman, sorry. Yeah, okay. Oh, sorry about that. I got that wrong. Sorry, Kathy. On a UK current affairs type show. Anyway, I was listening to this fellow talk about Jordan Peterson, and then what went on in the interview and what happened and things along those lines. And I thought to myself, you know what? I've heard this name Jordan Peterson come up a few times. I think it might be worthwhile to go and have a look at the interview, and then I'll have an opinion, know what they're talking about. So I did. I paused that fellow who was doing the commentary on the video between Jordan Peterson and Kathy Newman, and watched it. And all of a sudden I had found a gentleman who was prepared to speak the truth in the face of any ridicule, but he was actually prepared to have a bit of a conversation on television and recorded, and speak the actual truth of what was going on and what we're seeing, and the disparities in the narratives that we're seeing today. And I was really impressed. I was really impressed, which kickstarted me. I'm a bit obsessive, so off I went and found him on a podcast and things along those lines, and listened to his biblical series, which I've spent a lot of time with particular people who have been very close with me and been associated with the church, and I've held an interest in spirituality my whole life. And Jordan Peterson unpacked his series on spirituality and his psychoanalysis of Genesis, and it just blew me away how he navigated that and did a psychoanalysis on the development of firmament and Genesis, which really opened it up and went into Cain and Abel and things along those lines, which I thought was fascinating, which only reinforced my admiration for the man. So I continued to listen to quite a bit of his content, and he actually inspired me to do something in my life. At the time, I was delivering industrial laundry to, mechanics and abattoirs, and picking up filthy laundry and bagging it and taking it back to the factory and delivering things all over Melbourne and, working 12, 11 hours a day. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed that job. It was very physical. It was filthy, but I enjoyed it. But what it did give me was hours and hours of time in the van listening to educational podcasts. But before too long, I realised that I was really doing nothing with my life except wasting it away. So, yes, back to what I was talking about. Some of our inspiration will be taken for the likes of Jordan Peterson and people like that. And I suppose, essentially, I can sort of thank Jordan in a sort of backhanded way for getting me motivated and getting me motivated to motivate other people to produce things like this podcast and like our motivational business and moving forward to help as many people as we possibly can and making that as part of our purpose. I do firmly believe now I've been put here to help motivate people to live a really wonderful, fulfilled life. So that's what we're going to be speaking to. So we're going to be using Jordan's name a bit. So for better or for worse, that's going to be that has inspired us and will probably inspire us going forward. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Like, I'm sure there's like heaps of other names. Like, I've listened to a lot of Ben Shapiro as well.
Oh, yes.
And on the controversial side, I've listened to a bit of Andrew Tate. It's all preaching masculinity, appropriate masculine roles, and so there will be some controversial stuff being brought up.
Yeah, correct. And
as a disclaimer,
Andrew, yeah, that's correct. And Andrew Tate is he's a very controversial individual. I haven't looked at a lot of Andrew's stuff, but he's quite famous. I haven't really formulated a strong opinion on Andrew just of yet, but I know you've spoken about him quite a bit, mate. So that might be a good area for you to go into and your analysis of his narratives. I've just sort of started touching on Charlie Kirk, and he's an interesting fellow too. He backs most of his discussions and presentations on hardcore data, and I think you and I are hardcore data type individuals. Yeah.
Yep.
After 4 years of statistical analysis as attached to our undergraduate in psychological science, which is a prerequisite, you have to be able to navigate statistical analysis to formulate your opinions and to write to those opinions and report on those opinions as a part of a scientific analysis or psychological scientific analysis. So I certainly have found the value in statistics and what light that can shed on the reality of issues. We can have opinions and gut feelings and hearsay and what we normally live on social media and television and newspapers and radio. What formulates our position and opinions on things. But when you get down to statistical analysis is where you're really getting the information, the actual picture of what's going on. So, we're going to come from that perspective.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, I just want to touch on two things real quick. There was also another person in there that really helped me on my, I guess, journey was David Diotta. His book, I call it the Bible, The Way of the Superior Man. Yep. It's a fantastic book, and I know you're well aware of that as well. That was just another person I wanted to mention too, because I've only, I'm still very young. I haven't dedicated a huge amount of time like yourself or these people that we look up to in a way. So I think mention them too. I think we've always had like a mutual interest, and in the family as well, to find the truth.
Correct.
That's why we've gravitated towards people like this, because it resonates with us.
Correct.
Ever since I was a young teenager, we'd always speak about really, really interesting topics, and I'd always question what I'd see first. What's in my face, what flies in the face of normal, what everyone's talking about. I'd always question that. Like, I'm always had that curiosity of finding the truth. And in school, not everyone would believe what I think, or not everyone would think the same way. But I think that was where my curiosity come from, was why is everyone thinking like this? And it never resonated with me ever. Yep. I was like, surely, why isn't everyone questioning this? Surely I can't be the only one. But it turns out it's not everyone questions what they see, or back then anyway they didn't. So
no, they don't. A lot of people accept the narrative, and it's usually reinforced socially. So if someone sees something on the news, for instance, let's use that for an example, sees something on the news, and then every newspaper stand they walk past, it's the headline in the newspapers. And then, they'll bump into their Auntie Joan from down the street who's speaking about that because she's watched the same television program. she's seen the same newspaper, or she's probably read the newspaper, and that's a topic of discussion in the community for that week, whatever that may be. So therefore, that's the reinforcing process. You've seen it on television. Yarnie's seen it on television. When you bump into Yarnie, she says, "Did you see that?" "Yes, of course." "Wow, isn't that amazing?" "Yes, it is." So you formulate that, and then that is downloaded into your memory. Like that's burnt into your memory system. And of course, we all want to belong. We are social beings. We perish without social interaction and without social belonging. So we're going to speak to these issues, and that's going to formulate our opinion because we want to belong, as you know, as we've learned in class, how powerful that is. So therefore, that opinion is ingrained, formulated and ingrained. It's not until you introduce critical thinking into that equation that you actually start to question that. So, and I don't think critical thinking is. We speak of critical thinking quite a bit. We articulate the word and we throw it around. Yes, we must critical think. Like I remember in university, that's all they said. Well, you must critically think. But I don't think we're ever taught how to critically think or what critical thinking actually is, I might say. And I think that's a bit of a problem. I think that's a problem with a lot of things. Like when you say to one of your children, "Take responsibility," and you tend to do that more to young boys than you do to women. I'd need to check the data on that. But I think the boys are expected to take a lot more responsibility and act into their age before girls are. Again, I'll have to look at the data of that. But I'll speak from experience here. But we're never back to responsibility. But we're never actually taught or told, how do you take responsibility? How do you take responsibility? Is it something you put on? Is it a jumper you put on? Is it a hat? Is it something you write on your forearm with a biro? How do you take responsibility? And that's probably a good subject we should speak to a little bit later. But back to critical thinking, I tried to teach you guys as when you were growing up from a very young age to think critically, to expand your view beyond self a little bit and take in your environment, because you interact in your environment. Your environment is you. You manifest your environment from what you think and say. So be aware of what's going on in your environment, because not only can you impact on your environment has the capacity to impact on you. So that's why I got you guys to actually think a little bit more critically than normal. Of course, I got that from my mother, who was she was a very deep thinker, and she thought very critically. And I suppose that's where I got my big picture mindset. I have a big picture mindset. I can sort of view things. I know a lecturer of mine who I did a Wessler intelligence test with, just to help her out as she was going. She had to practice how she implemented it and stuff like that, and I was eager to find out how they actually implemented these tests as being a dedicated student. And she said, you think very fluidly. You think about everything, everywhere, all the time, like fluid. And I said, oh, you've really nailed me down there, haven't you? Anyway, she said... I said, oh yeah, I do, don't I? And she said, yes, you do. I think she says it's a good thing, but it's not a good thing, particularly in university. She said, you're trying to in university you have to get a concept and write to a concept and nail it down. You can't be thinking fluidly. So
I disagree with that.
That's a bit of
Yeah, I agree and disagree with that, because it's like, well, would a fluid thinker struggle in environments where it is only one way to think? That was where I was be like, yes and no, because university is only one way to speak. Our education system is just based on one way to think, one way to act. So would a fluid thinker struggle in environments like that? I don't think so. But is that why she said that? Because she knows that university is one way. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, and that's an interesting point you bring up, Rem, because I was out of school the first time at 15. Not long after that, out of home. So I had to go back as a mature age student because I couldn't cope with that. Maybe that was because I I had an attention issue. You know, my attention span lasted about 13 nanoseconds. Yeah, and I needed something else to stimulate it anyway. And maybe I had to get that fluid thinking more into control. And of course, when I went back to university, I knew that I had to focus. If I was going to achieve this, I would have to focus, and that took a conscious thought. So you might be right there. Fluid thinking might hinder the education system and the education process.
Yep.
And I wonder if it's a male or a female trait.
We'd have to look into that.
We'll have to look into that too. There's another thing to have a bit of a look at, and there's some of the things that we're going to have to look at. You know, really, because we can't really make an opinion. I don't want to be. Well, we're going to have opinions that come out in the podcast, but we'd like to back that up with some data as well, right? And open up those discussions. Now, I've got a couple of questions here. I want to ask you this one. All right, I've written down here. Who are we trying to help, mate? Who would we like to help? We've both decided that our charter and our purpose is to do something for someone else. Yes, is that correct? Is that why we're doing that? We've come out of uni, we've done the hard miles, we're a bit frustrated with some issues that's going around. Well, some of the issues are
masculinity is a huge issue.
Yeah, thank you.
But I think at first for me, I want to help as much people as I can.
Yep.
But as a specific audience, I want to help men.
Yep.
I want to help men reach their full potential because it's concerning in today's society how people, and specifically men because they struggle with identifying with their emotions, have become resentful and bitter and arrogant and with no use to their community and no use to their families and just lost. And I feel like that's a specific audience I'd like to speak to, and the suicide rate is a perfect reflection of that.
Absolutely.
There's a crisis of masculinity, and a serious one. It is very bad.
Yes, it is.
And I know multiple of my friends that have lost their fathers.
Yep.
I know a handful, probably 5 or 6 of my friends from high school don't have a father, or their parents live on the other side of the country or something, and it's a detriment to who they are.
Correct.
And that's why the more we talk about it is something that I think people could get a lot out of.
I think so. And you're right. At the end of the day, I'd really like to have some sort of impact on that self-worth and, possibly, have a bit of an impact on that suicide rate somehow.
Yep.
Because it's a terrible shame that we're losing so many men. It's a tragedy for everybody. It's a tragedy for everyone involved, including society, on every level, economically, nationally, spiritually, emotionally. It's just a tragedy. It devastates a community.
Everyone suffers too. It's not just one part of society suffers. Every part
correct.
does, on either side, masculine or feminine. When
Correct.
there's a destruction of one of the sexes, everyone suffers.
Correct. And suicide is like a pebble in a pond. The pebble enters the water and makes a splash, and the ripples go out right to the very edge of the pond. That's what happens when someone suffers the fate of depression and decides to act on that. And if this is a trigger for you and you're struggling, I would firmly recommend that you speak to somebody like Lifeline, or you ring your local police station or hospital or clinic or anybody and have a bit of a chat to that. I heard a really good story by a fellow. He was called the Unbreakable Farmer, who he'd lost his farm due to it was a generational farm handed down to him through his family, and he lost it through floods, and he lost crops, and he suffered mental illness and suicidal ideation. He gave me a really good tip. And he was saying that he recommends that people put down 5 contact numbers in their phone, and they write those 5 people down in their bags and have it around close to them. And when you're feeling in that position of despair where there is no answer and there's only coming up one clear answer, which is not the answer. Suicide is not the answer.
No, it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Correct. And every problem is temporary. every problem you've ever come across has been experienced before, dealt with before, and gotten through, gotten over. It's actually turned into a positive outcome if you get out the other side, because it's a learning opportunity. Anyway, this fellow was saying that you write these 5 numbers down, you put these 5 numbers in your phone, and when you're having a difficult time and you're feeling that there is only one way out, and that's not as we just said, for fear of going over familiar ground. You ring one of these numbers and you keep on going through the 5 until you can contact somebody, and then you speak to them about your situation. And Warren, his name was, it was the Unbreakable Farmer, and he told the story of a lady who had just come home through traffic, and she was a CEO, and she worked very, very hard and was very, very stressed out, and she was raising a couple of children. I think she was on her own as well, as so many of them are. And she'd had an accident on the way home, so she'd driven home, and the garage door went up, and she parked her car in the garage, and the garage door went down, and she sat there behind the wheel typing out a sorry text, forgive me, to her daughter. It was the beginning of a suicide note. Anyway, so while she was typing this suicide text out to her daughter, she dropped the phone down beside her seat. So she fossies around, gets her phone out from down beside the seat. And she'd accidentally hit the screen and closed the letter, but accidentally at the same time opened up these list of 5 contacts. So she rang the first one. They didn't answer. She rang the second one. They didn't answer. She rang the third one. They answered. Talked her through it. They also got someone else to ring an ambulance and the police, and they went round there and talked her out of the car, took her and put her in emergency, and she survived and got therapy, and now is working through her issues.
Wow.
A simple little thing like that can really make a difference. Because when you're in that hard position and when you're going through that hard time, it's only for a short period of time. Take some deep breaths, go for a walk, get some sunshine, speak to somebody, go and speak to somebody. Isolation is not the answer. Do not isolate. If you're depressed, do not isolate. Right? If you're anxious, do not isolate. Get out, find somebody, speak to somebody, speak to your dad, speak to your mum, cousin, brother, anybody you can speak to who you enjoy having a conversation with. Go and have a chat to them. And if you haven't got anybody, ring the police, ring ambulance, ring Lifeline. But hopefully, our discussions, might be able to shed some light on this topic and help some people out. So yeah. I think essentially that answers that question to a degree of who are we trying to help.
Can I just say one thing too? It's always been a purpose of mine to be the strength people turn to for. I feel like that's a pretty good goal I could have for myself, because helping people is true fulfillment, in my opinion. And like it's dangerous out there when you isolate yourself, and more dangerous for men, I'd say, because they isolate all the time.
Absolutely.
Therapy itself is quite a feminizing process. You know, come in, sit down, talk about your feelings, reflect. It's a very feminizing process. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a very, very effective tool if done right.
Correct.
It's very effective. So I like it. I do it. But some men don't know how to do that. And it's serious, because we had a woman pass as a man, transgender. Her name was Nora Vincent. She decided to become a man for a few years and do everything that a man does and go to all the extra length. She ended up committing suicide. Just from gender transferring. And like, I don't really know much about it, obviously. I just heard the name thrown around a couple of times, spoke to a couple of people about it, and I feel like that's very important, because how can, transition to a man? She could have been any reason why, who knows, but an ending like that is very disappointing. Yeah. Very serious.
And condolences out to Nora's family and to Nora. It's a sad story. We don't want to duplicate those type of outcomes. We actually want to speak to this subject, so we're all fluent in this subject and how we can all contribute to helping people through these difficult times.
Yeah, just says quickly here, began practice passing as a man. So she did everything in her power to be a man.
Yep.
Without any hormone replacements or anything like that. And she ended up committing suicide.
Yeah, well, that's a really sad story at the end of the day. And I'm really surprised there wasn't someone there to reach out and help her through that rough bit. You know, and that's the danger of doing things in isolation. Again, obviously she was unsupported. She's doing a bit of an experiment, and we are, as individuals, our own experiments, right? We are our own experiment. So trying new things out and trying new avenues of trying to develop of who you are is a very natural and worthy cause. But I'm really surprised that she didn't have someone around her to support her through that.
Yeah, I need to look more into that. There's a whole lot more to the story, I can imagine, but
well, the devil's in the detail every time.
Yep.
I got another question here. This is going to be a curly one.
Bring it on.
How are we going to help them? How are we going to help these young men?
That is a great question, and we've done a lot of brainstorming on this over the last over the last year, actually.
Good. Yes, we've been. Let's talk about that for 1 second. I'll ask the question again. How long has this been in the development? This idea of ours?
For at least the last 10 months to a year, I'd say, because I entered year 4. We entered year 4 uni honours of psychological science, not really knowing what we want to do after our degree.
Correct.
And it kind of, through our ability, and I grew a lot of confidence in my writing ability and education. I take education very seriously, in being able to help people. And so throughout our 4th year, we kind of, began brainstorming ideas on how we can help people, because over the last couple of years, we've lost some pretty important people to us.
Yes.
And so, like my grandfather, for example, was a huge role model in helping people, and being an international ACTU officer.
Yep.
And very high up in the United Churches and stuff. So he's a very important man.
Yep.
God bless Alan. And we lost Padre too.
Yep, that's correct.
So we lost some really important men. So
Padre was a senior priest with the Uniting Church, actually, and a lifelong friend. I've known him since primary school. Actually, we grew up together.
His name's Mark Ramage.
Yep.
And God bless. But so we've watched some people in our life kind of deteriorate and not know what to do. And so we brainstorm programs and also watch heaps of people and gain as much knowledge as we can. So I think one way we can help people is, one, through the podcast first.
Yep.
Kind of like a platform people can kind of, I guess, relate to.
Yeah.
Feel comfortable.
Connect.
Yeah, connect. We want to launch programs to help people.
Yep.
We want to launch camps and events.
Yep.
People can come to and engage with us. Through literature and our own education processes, we want to help people that way. And do you have anything else you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I'd like to do public speaking, actually, where we can speak to motivational subjects to motivate people, and to talk to appropriate masculinity in the 21st century, to try and navigate through the minefield of ideas, attitudes, narratives that are presenting themselves in the 21st century. And how young men can navigate through that and find an identity and find a purpose, and then actually step into the role of who they want to be, and then move forward. So I want to do some public speaking. We want to talk to groups of young men, groups of mature age men, in relation to some of the issues that we face in this day and age. And we also want to run a few courses in relation to getting in touch with things along those lines. We are planning a course at the moment in relation to doing an analysis on your personality, and to see where your strengths lie and key factors of your personality. And that'll be using the big 5 personality factors of the ocean: open to experience,
we want
conscientiousness, extroversion, and
eroticism.
agreeableness and eroticism under the acronym of OCEAN. So we're looking at that as well, because if you have a good understanding of how your personality is made up, you can make better decisions for yourself. So, yeah, we want to look at that. Go on, sorry, you were going to say something?
I was just going to say it's a very important message, right, is that people, and especially men, have to believe they actually have something to offer.
Correct.
And have a purpose.
Correct.
And a meaning.
Correct.
Because a man's happiness is a man's purpose.
Correct.
And a man's meaning. Look, without meaning or purpose, there's no will there.
Yeah, correct. Now, years and years ago, men had a purpose. I'm talking not that far, probably about 50 years ago. Men had a purpose. Men were born and bred to go to war, was the first purpose. The second purpose was to go out to work and provide. And the third purpose was to get married, have children, and protect. They were the fundamental purpose of a man's life. That made up all the purpose.
Yep.
Today, 2024, most wars are still waged, unfortunately, but that's done by remote. Lots of that's done by drones and remote-controlled instruments of destruction. And so therefore, there's not really a role for the foot soldier anymore, not like Second World War and First World War, where all men on deck. It's an interesting choice of words, that, isn't it? All men on deck. Anyway, I digress. And anyway, so men were bred for war. There is no war anymore. So men were bred for work. Well, in the Western society, they've shut down and gotten rid of just about all their industry. There's only a handful of industries left around home construction, services, and IT. If you don't fit into any of those brackets, you're going to struggle. And the third area that men were bred. Purpose they were bred for was to provide and protect. Marriage, children, provide and protect. Well, the statistics are in. It's considered now that 50% of marriages fail. They end in divorce. So therefore, there's half the marriages that end in divorce end up with fatherless homes. Of those 50% of them have young boys in single parent families without a father. So this is a bit of a problem. But back to what we were talking about, man's purpose now is largely gone.
Yes.
So how do we sort that out? What is our purpose? How do we define that? How do you articulate that? It's like what we were talking about before about responsibility. How do you explain responsibility? It's very difficult to do that. But we're going to attempt to do that, and we're going to attempt to create, not so much create, but articulate pathways and present strategies of how to find your purpose.
Through our courses and programs. Correct. Yeah, I wouldn't mind. That's very good. Everything you just said is smack, head on the nail on the head,
you.
Sorry.
Yep.
I wouldn't mind doing some one-on-one life coaching and counselling as well.
Oh, we're going to do lots of coaching. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I'd love to
Absolutely.
get into.
If people want to who attend our online courses and speaking arrangements and things along those lines, and they want to go a bit deeper, well, yeah, I'd be happy to be providing a coaching arrangement too. And there's a few other things in the pipeline as well, isn't there? There's we've got a book coming out on masculinity that should be out sometime through the middle of the year.
If everything goes according to plan.
Yes, if everything goes according to plan. Well, there's only 24 hours in a day, really, isn't there?
That's right.
We could certainly do a 28 or 32, but then again, we still wouldn't have enough.
Yeah.
But that's going to be coming out, and that's going to be around appropriate masculinity and behaviours. We'll be exploring the issues that we face today as men, and again, strategies of how to find purpose and how to navigate through some of these narratives, which can have a little bit of a negative effect on young men, particularly in their most impressionable years. And so that's coming up. What else? Well, I can't remember what else we got coming in the pipeline. There's a few things coming in the pipeline, isn't there?
Yeah, websites.
That's right. The website will be up and running too by February the 10th. And if you want to contact us, you can go on to aimed motivational empowerment network.com.
Yeah, I think so.
I think it's .com.
I haven't looked at the website for a bit.
Yeah, that's in development at the moment, so we can access there. Or you can get in contact with us at Noel C Blundell on Facebook. You can touch base that way. And
because we have a whole team. We've got not just us two, but our Reeves and Jonah, my twin and my older brother, and Meg, stepmom too, doing the social side. So we've got a whole team on board, really putting an effort to make a difference, I guess, and really try help people.
Correct.
And reach out and give people a place to improve themselves and reach their full potential.
That's correct. And look, and everyone's quite dedicated to this course. Everyone has felt the negatives of some of the narratives that are getting around, and would like to see a change. And every time I public speak to the issue of masculinity, I see a lot of the women actually are very interested, very excited. They would like to talk about it more because I've had women come out of the audience and tell me, yes, my son's at home and he's 30 and and he hasn't got a girlfriend, and what am I going to do? What can we do? Well, these are some of the things we want to speak to. These are some of the things we want to talk. We want to reach out to these young men. We want to reach out to their mothers and their sisters and their girlfriends and actually have a chat to them as well, and just start the dialogue, because men are notorious for withholding things and struggling with being able to articulate their emotions or getting in touch with it with what they feel and what people around them are feeling and what's going on in their environment, and how to articulate that and how do I speak to that and what do I do about that, So we want to speak about all that. There must be a way through, and we're happy to start speaking about those
of
topics.
Course. Yeah, and it's interesting you said that it's the women that usually jump out of their chairs and say, where have you been for so long? Because they feel it too. It's a crisis of masculinity that's a detriment to the feminine too.
Right.
And I was just at the mechanic not long ago. She's like, yeah, I'm really interested in this and that and this. And she's like, my son is depressed.
What's
and
the response?
Yeah, like
everywhere.
Yeah. And I find that very interesting though, because that's how, and I'm going to say this, that's how mainstream narrative actually get hold of the public. They develop emotional, bearing arguments that play on emotional and moral values. Yeah. And the feminine is more invested emotionally in things. It's how they're hardwired per se.
Yep.
And the masculine's desire is just to impress the feminine. So when the feminine gets hold of an issue that's emotionally, got hold of them emotionally, the men are more likely to listen to them. And that's the same way, and the opposite effect is that's why women are jumping out at our message, is because they know that they can probably reach their son or their husband a lot closer because, they're in the family dynamic for one, but also because I think they listen to their partner and their mum more so than, I don't know, just, you know what I mean? Just
because the partners and the mums and the nurturers, mate.
Yeah, and that's why they'd listen, because from a very, very young age, it's like we've always listened to mothers since we were a child, and since we were young, and so I think that's why the masculine always listens to the feminine.
Correct.
Always, and that's why I think when it comes to the narratives, making arguments up that gets hold of them emotionally, they don't just get the feminine in that loop, they get everyone in that loop.
Correct.
So that's just what I want to say real quick. But that's really interesting how it works in an opposite effect, even in our message.
Yes, correct. So. And that's correct. And in closing, I would like to say this. Although we will be concentrating on a narrative that is touching on issues of masculinity in our society, I would like to put this forward. The masculine can't survive without the feminine. And the feminine can't survive without the masculine. The feminine and the masculine come together to make a beautiful union, to build an unbreakable bond to build one unit that goes forward, takes our species forward, to actually go off and create a history and create offspring and take us forward as a species. This is not going to be a forum for actually for bashing one or the other, So if we're going to be talking about masculinity, it's not going to be about negative responses or narratives about femininity. That's not what we're on about. We're on about appropriate masculinity behaviour, which incorporates the feminine, both the animus and the anima within the individual, the feminine and the masculine within the individual, and the feminine energy, because all masculine needs the feminine energy in their lives. We all need our mothers. We all need our aunties. We all need our wives, our girlfriends, our sisters. They are the guiding light. They are usually the common sense in chaos. They are the sacred place and the feeling of home and safety, whilst the masculine is usually the protector. The masculine keeps the monsters away. The masculine will stand up in the face of tyranny and horror and work their way through that to make sure the women and children are protected. We can't live without each other, and we only complement each other. So I did want to make sure that was quite clear in what we're going to achieve and go moving forward. We might wrap that up there, mate. What do you think?
I think everything's great.
Yeah, I think everything's great too. I'm very excited to move forward with this initiative. What about yourself?
Yeah, very excited. I've been looking forward to doing this for quite a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got lots to talk about. I'm always constantly told I've got lots to talk about, and I do. I'm just a bit like that. I talk the leg off an iron pot, but that's that's all right. If I can bottle it and write to it, I might make a fortune. But you never know. All right. Look, thank you very much, everyone, for listening. Keep an ear out. We're going to be regularly dropping episodes on interesting topic, and we would dearly like you to attend and let us know how we're going and what you think. As I said, if you would like to reach out to us, we can be found at AIMED Motivational Empowerment Network.com, or we can be found on Facebook under Noel C Blundell. You take care. Thank you, Remy.
Thank you.
And we'll be speaking soon. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.